welcome back to another video. Today I thought I would just talk about what it was like moving to the United States at 18 years old and living here during my college years, because I feel like it could be helpful, and I think my experience is a lot of other people's experiences, and it's something that really defined me and something that continuously defines me. So I'm going to talk about what it was like. Let's start with moving to the US and why I decided to move here. So I was born and raised in Prague, Czech Republic. It's a city in Central Europe. It's not Czechoslovakia, it's Czech Republic, and I guess now it's called Czechia, but I was born and raised there, and I attended a international school for the majority of my life. I switched between like British and American schools, and I was raised in a international environment. There were various cultures, there's people from all around the world, and so I was raised in that environment and kind of grew up in that environment. But I knew, I would say since middle school, that I would be going to the United States for college, because I had a green card, which meant that I was a permanent resident of the US, and that allowed me to live, work, and study in the United States and have those sort of rights. So basically, fast forward to senior year, I was applying to American colleges, and I pretty much only applied to the US and applied really on a variety of a spectrum. I applied to top schools, middle schools, and safe schools, and I ended up going to one of my safe schools because of the financial aid and the scholarships that I was able to receive. That ended up being Drew University in New Jersey, and honestly, I wouldn't change anything about my experience there. I feel like my 3 years at Drew really, solidified my experience, and obviously there were some challenging times, but also I think some very rewarding times, so I wouldn't change anything about my experience. But I ended up going to Drew. At the time of moving to the US, I was about 18 and a half years old, so I flew to JFK with my parents because they were going on a vacation while dropping me off at college, and they dropped me off on campus. And I remember I was on campus for 2 weeks prior to the actual international student orientation, so I basically was just living in the dorms as if I was a summer student. And I remember getting dropped off, and I just had like all my belongings that I took from Prague, because I wasn't coming back to Czech Republic. I knew I was going to be living in the US, and that's just like a weird thing to know at 18 years old. So I literally packed all my bags. I have my suitcases, and I think I had 3 suitcases, and I had like my sheets and my comforter and things like that. We'll get to that in a bit, in a bag. And I get to like one of the dorms, and the dorms that they have, you just have a bed, a twin extra large bed, a desk, a chair, and like some drawers to put your clothes in, and like a closet. And they kind of dropped me off, and they were like, all right, like, well, actually no, after they dropped me off, the first thing we did is we went to Chase Bank, and we went together to get myself a debit card, because I didn't have any sort of debit card in the US. Obviously, I just moved from Czech Republic. We went together to the Chase Bank, and I still remember this day so vividly, but we went to Chase, and I was like doing this on my own, like with my parents there, but I remember sitting down with one of the bank people and signing up for a card, and I remember if I put in a certain amount, like they would give me $200 free. So I literally put down all the money that I saved onto this card, and got like extra $200 at time of deposit, and this was like my magic item, for the rest of, until now I still have that card. And once we figured out the card, my parents, kissed me goodbye. We said our goodbyes, and then they went on their vacation, and I was just there for 2 weeks. And those 2 weeks were some of the most difficult 2 weeks that I've ever had in my life, because not only at that point, I came to a completely new place. Like, yes, a country I've been to before, but like a completely new place, a completely new town, a completely new surroundings. I'm fully alone. I don't have a phone. Like, I have a phone, but like it only works on Wi-Fi, so I can't really like get around. And I just started doing like long distance with a high school boyfriend. Yeah, it didn't work out. All of those things combined just like really tested my ability to be alone, operate alone, and like become self-dependent. So I remember those 2 weeks very vividly. And then I remember the next day, or like one of the next few days, my next task was getting a working US phone because I still had a phone with a Czech SIM card. And so I don't really remember what the deal was. Oh, so I went to like an AT&T in the neighboring town, which also, mind you, getting to the neighboring town was without like data was just crazy at that point, to Chatham. And I went to the AT&T in Chatham, and I remember the man that owns the AT&T store in Chatham is probably the nicest man that I've ever met in my entire life. And he helped get me set up on a payment plan to get an iPhone. It was the 6th iPhone, and the reason why I had to get a new phone and like do like a payment plan is because like they didn't have like SIM cards to put into my European phone. I remember spending like 2 to 3 hours there in this tiny AT&T store, but that man was so nice. He also helped me down the line, like when my phone broke. Like he literally loaned me one of their phones. He was great, honestly. I wish I remembered his name. But that was my second task that I had to get done, and now I had like reoccurring payments that I had to make for this AT&T phone. And I just remember, damn, like I remember feeling like I was really growing up really quickly in that moment, just because I had these financial responsibilities now. And the rest of the 2 weeks, really, I was just like looking for a job. Really, I was going around the town and trying to drop my resumes in various places. I literally tried to get any sort of job. I tried to get an interview at Chipotle. They never ended up messaging me back, but I still love Chipotle. I just really tried to get a job anywhere because I was looking for an income, and that was like important to me. And then afterwards, the international orientation starts. So how international like student orientation works is different from college to college, but I would say it pretty much stays the same, where like international students usually arrive first, and then like the domestic students arrive for like their college move-in or whatever, like the freshmen. And so I remember being so excited for the international student orientation because I was like, wow, like it's been 2 weeks. I've been alone in this dorm for 2 weeks. I can't wait for people to be here. I can't wait to like actually like hang out with other people and like really just not be alone anymore, and also like do all the fun activities, because I honestly just was so excited to be in a US college and like get to experience all of that stuff. And I remember international student orientation started, and they had like domestic students and other international students who have been at the college before basically be like ambassadors. So they helped us do things that some of the things I already did, like setting up a card, setting up a phone, and things like that. And then other things that I didn't have to do with immigration and visa and stuff like that. And I was very fortunate that I didn't have to do that because I was fortunate enough to have a green card. So fortunately, I did not have hardships related to my immigration status, and I know many of my friends did, and I know how difficult it is to be a true international student in the United States. So thankfully I had the privilege to not encounter those challenges. But there was this orientation, and I got to meet with a lot of different girls that, you know, I still keep in touch with and still like think so highly of. And that was my true first taste of what college would be like. And that kind of leads me to another thing, which I think, and I'm curious why this is a thing, and if you are an American student that thought this way, or perhaps you're an international student that also experienced this, like let me know. But I feel like in the US, if you are like quote unquote labeled as an international student, you're like looked upon as like a total different group of people. And it's weird because like you can be an international student from like Europe, you can be an international student from say like the Netherlands versus like an international student from like South Africa or Japan, and you would still be grouped in like the same pool of people, like you're an international student. And something that I experienced, which was super weird to me, is like being labeled as a like international student meant that you were rich and that you like didn't necessarily have to try hard at school, and you kind of had like mom and dad paid for everything, and you like dressed in the best clothes and had the best bags and whatever. And I feel like I experienced that to the point where like I feel like people looked up at me like I was, you know, a rich but I was not, obviously. Like, I had to earn everything myself, whatever. I'm not justifying myself, but I just thought it was super strange that the way I feel like domestic American students looked upon international students was like this whole different perspective. I realized that because I noticed that the way I was being treated with regards to some of my American friends was a bit different, because the way I was treated in certain conversations and in friendships was like, oh, well, she's from Europe, so she does blah, 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 or she wears blah, 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 which was interesting. I don't know if like other international students, if you are an international student and you've witnessed this, like, how did that make you feel? And I kind of noticed this over the past couple years that I was in college. Also, I graduated college like 5 years ago now, 4 years ago. That there was like definitely like a line between like domestic students and international students, and something that always I feel like felt strange to me was, you know, the international students had their own early move-in, and then the domestic students had their move-in like kind of a week later after international students moved in. And I remember already living in the dorms, and then because my roommate was gonna be coming from like somewhere in the US, I knew who she was, but we didn't like know each other. We just kind of chose each other, I think, like on one of those Facebook groups or roommate choosing things. But so my roommate was coming with like the American students, and I remember waking up on move-in day for the American students and seeing like the resident assistants and like the move-in people who were like volunteering to help move in the US like freshmen. I feel like I'm explaining this really badly. I remember waking up at 6 a.m. to like screams and cheers and like just excitement, and people running down the hallway and like doors slamming and like excitement, like parents through the hallways. And I remember being like, whoa, like it feels so loud and so chaotic. And it felt very strange because it felt like the move-in day for the US students, I mean, given that there were a lot more of them than international students, but it felt like the US move-in was just like full celebration, like everyone's going all out, everyone's super exciting, like woo, like all the cheers, and like, you know, the parents coming with their kids in the cars, and like their vendors like coming into the campus and like selling mattresses, selling comforters, duvet covers, sheets, like laundry baskets, like shower caddies, whatever you think that you would need for a dorm, like coming to campus and like being ready to sell that to all the domestic students. And that like really made me think, and I started like feeling, oh, like that's crazy, like these American students got so much more like special treatment versus like the international students. So that was another interesting thing for me that like I still carry with me, and this was something that I noticed within my experience. I feel like I've been talking for a long time, but after move-in, I would say that I went through a lot of challenges my first year, and a lot of those challenges had to do with self-reliance, self-dependence, learning how to be alone, adapting to like American culture and American education systems, and learning how to like manage my money, learning what to do like during, you know, Thanksgiving, when all the American students would go to their homes and international students would either go with someone that they knew really well because, you know, they got invited to Thanksgiving. About the construction. That's very loud. Or they would stay and have to pay additional fees to stay in the dorms during like a holiday or whatever. So the construction is super loud. I don't know if I should continue to film this or not. Anyway, in my freshman year, I experienced friendship drama for the first time. You know, like real friendship drama, you know, I mean, I had friendship drama in like middle school, but like this was like true, like being in a girl group of friends and like having drama. And it wasn't really like drama that I was involved in. It was more like me having opinions on certain drama that caused me to feel annoyed with the group and caused me to like feel distant, and as a result like the friendships fizzled out, and it was like not a big deal because like people grow apart. I mean, you're not gonna be besties with the first people you meet that you live next to in the dorms like your freshman year. That's just reality. And I like had my first taste of that. I had my first taste of like heartbreak, because at that moment in the winter of like my first year ended the relationship, the long distance relationship, and that was like total blow to like my self-confidence. It was a total blow to like knowing about my future, and it was really difficult because all I kind of had to lean on was myself, and I had to basically like pick myself back up and get myself together and get A's in all my classes and apply for scholarships and do well, and also like find jobs and like get money so that I can earn money and support either my lifestyle or like or buy books, you know, like anything that was like that. So I feel like that was really tough because I really learned in college, especially the first year, of what it's like to be alone and how to find happiness in your own company and how to, you know, survive really like on your own. And a lot of that came from, one, like of course being super far from my family and super far from my high school friends. You know, I didn't have the luxury of like seeing my family on the weekends if I wanted to, or you know, the way I would keep in touch with my friends was through FaceTime or even through like WhatsApp voice messages. But like your friends are also in college having their own experiences, so you really like weirdly like feel alone, and that was really tough. And the other part of this was like summers, and I will say only summers mostly, because during the winter I would typically go back home for the whole month to spend time with my family, and like I wouldn't live on campus. I know so many students that did, and I would say the summers of being alone and living on campus in New Jersey or living like in the town and like subletting a room, that really taught me that, you know, self-reliance aspect, and you know, paying rent for the first time, and like making sure I have enough money for rent, making sure that I'm like rationing my grocery money and like being smart with my money and stuff like that. So that was interesting. I think to me, like learning to be comfortable alone was an important thing to learn, because, and you know, like I was a pretty independent person and I like liked my own company when I lived at home with my family in Prague, but there's no such thing as being alone when at night, you know, like you have to cook dinner for yourself, you have to do your laundry, you have to plan your groceries, you have to like, all the people that you know might not be available to hang out a certain weekend. You have to like teach yourself to be okay with entertaining yourself, if that makes sense. So the way that I did that during the first summer was getting into like running and fitness and like working out, and that really like I feel like helped fill a gap in my life where I felt like I was kind of lonely, in the sense of just not really having like that social aspect, because in the summer when you're in college nobody's there, everyone goes away, goes home or studies abroad for the whole 3 months or whatever, but like there's rarely any people that stay on campus. So that taught me a lot. And but then there were like some really good things, and I think some of the good things about college, of course, is like the education aspect, and also just how many opportunities you can really get if you are proactive and if you do everything you can to get those opportunities. To me, I think the education that I got in 3 years that I was there was very, very valuable, because it kind of made me sprint to other opportunities. And so I, coming to Drew, as I mentioned, like I had a pretty good scholarship, and I tried to find other opportunities to get more funding for my education. And I was taking Chinese courses because I took Chinese in high school, and so I wanted to continue with it in college. And I heard about the study abroad opportunity, so I knew I couldn't go on it unless I had some sort of funding. So I ended up just like going all in and trying to get funding, and I got funding to go to China for a whole month. But I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have the challenges that I had and wanted to take all the opportunities I wanted to take. And so I'm like very grateful for being that type of person that like tried to chase opportunities and really like say yes to everything. And then on the job front, that was a challenge, but at the end of the day, it really taught me a lot about the value for money, about pitching yourself, about being confident, about having communication skills, about trying to market yourself. Also, just learning different perspectives of people. I had so many different jobs when I was in college. I worked at the archives on campus. I worked as the front desk for one of the student centers. I worked as a front desk for like a Pilates studio. I worked as a front desk for another fitness studio. I worked as a front desk at a hair like salon. I worked in a restaurant. I worked at Nikki's Firehouse Pizza, and I love Nikki's. Like that was probably one of my favorite jobs because honestly I loved being a waitress and a server. I felt like that got me talking, got me more confident. I just loved being on my feet, as opposed to just sitting and being at a front desk. And that just taught me a lot about like building relationships with people you work with, and about managing your time. And for example, for me, like it taught me how to be strategic, you know, like how can I like maximize the amount of money I make and also like have time for school. So I would work like Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, or like Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays, I believe. So I would like work on the days that I would think that I would make the most money from tips. And it just taught me a lot. And like even to this day, like I still reference those jobs because they really made me stronger and made me more smart, or made me smarter. Not me not knowing how to speak English, because I think I am a good communicator and I can sell myself to different, like in general in life, because I've had so many of those jobs. And I'm also, I feel like I'm a better person because I've worked in like customer service facing positions before. I've worked the front desks, I've worked the assistant positions, I've worked the like, you know, server positions, I've cleaned people's dirt up, you know, I've cleaned toilets before. Like I'm not someone that takes success lightly and like just doesn't think about how I got here. Like it really is a part of my journey of, you know, who I'm becoming and how I like see myself. So I'm very, very grateful for those. But those are kind of some of the things that came to mind in terms of like my journey of moving to the US, and like some of the challenges that I faced, but also some of the things that have really solidified my experience, solidified me as a person, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And on the friendships note, I feel like friendships in college really teach you what you want and what you don't want, and what you're willing to tolerate and what you are not willing to tolerate. And I feel like in college, that's when you first start to understand, like, oh, like I am not willing, like this is my red line, like I'm not willing to tolerate XYZ behavior, or like I am willing, or like this is what I want in a friend, or like this is what I want in a partner, because this can apply to relationships too. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. But I think this is a long video already, but this is my experience, and maybe I should have started a podcast. I have a lot of other things I feel like I want to talk about, like international relations, careers, or stuff like that, or like doing long distance and like having one thing not work out but then having an amazing thing work out. I don't know, just ideas. Anyway, but it was tough, but we made it, and we're here now with a full-time job, living in New York City, having a dog, and it really makes me warm and happy that I made it this far. and I hope you come along for the rest of this journey, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Also, my song Ego Destiny is coming out soon because I mentioned I like music, and there's a whole thing I didn't even cover about this college thing about music, but maybe one day I'll get into it. But love you. Bye.